People keep telling Mike that this isn't going to work. It's not going to make power. It's not going to be worth it. What do you think?
Man, it's going to make power. We're going to make some power.
How's it going to make power? Please tell us what you've done.
There's a few things I took into account. One, nobody really had much data on the different setups. So what I wanted to do is literally do full-on data. I did everything we could possibly do to a stock Renesis. Everything I could possibly think of. We put it into this motor. And this is mainly just to get a base before we do any hybrids, because there's no real data on hybrids either. So I want to see what the pros and cons are between the two. Because everyone's like, oh, throw peripheral exhaust ports. Okay, great. We'll throw them in there, see if it makes any difference. And what the differences are. You may lose the entire bottom end on the motor. And for road course racing, that's not a good thing. A lot of people would much rather have the bottom, that torque in the mid-range versus that peak. So in some cases, if the motor only makes 250 horsepower, but the whole mid-range has got a really fat body on it, but if we throw the other housings in it and say it makes 270, but only at the tip top peak, well, but the whole body's garbage, then that other motor is going to be better, period. So with that being said, so we're starting off with this motor first. It's just a standard Renesis motor. It's got fresh housings and has been resurfaced. So we threw a couple extra things. I golf balled the port just to see if it make any difference. Not really sure if it's going to do much of anything. Looked cool. Anyway, so went in for the standard street port, and then I do a little bit more than that, and I also went a little bit further down on the secondaries here, and then also we did a full bridge. Now the nice thing about keeping the factory intake here, we can open all these valves, staged like stock, and actually see the bumps and increases. So we have another street port motor like this that we also did as well, and we can compare the graphs between the two and just see if we make more in that mid-range body. If we pick up 5 or 6 horsepower here, when the transition happens on the SSV valve, then yes, this will be a viable port to add. Now we also have our 6-port bridge here as well. Obviously, if we open our 6th port, it's above 6,000, and it doesn't make any more power, then there's no point in doing this. Now I did do the largest exhaust port I could possibly do on a Renesis here, so we're going to see how that works. Now this is a full bridge, so the center plate is bridged as well, with a golf ball and my large street port on that as well. So we'll see the increases in the power bands as we step up. So we're gonna check that out, see what that does, because everyone's like, but why? Why? The exhaust ports are already limited. And I'm like, okay, fine, the exhaust ports are limited. Let's see how limited they are. So right now I opened up the intake just about as far as I can. We can do a little bit more up here, but we're going to double check it anyway, because if it doesn't make any more in a street port, then there's no reason to go any further if we're limited at the exhaust. So we are going to be running 3 EGTs as well, just to see where we are as far as the exhaust temps go. And then, we do have our full bridge, so we're going to see how that goes. Also, we went one step further. Now I'm still waiting on my rotating assembly to get back on this, but we did do a double scallop on the rotor as well, quite large. Mainly was, like I said, the maximum amount of stuff that we could do to a Renesis to see if it does produce more power. So I did do both intake and exhaust. Not that I think we need any more intake. We got a lot of intake. The main thing was to see if we can maybe make the exhaust hang open a little longer to get a little bit more exhaust flow and see if that works. So we're going to test that out. Also, we did go through the intake as well. Obviously, this has now been ported for the bridge, so this comes back a lot further for the opening, and then also we port matched the 6/4 to that as well. With that being said, we also port matched the runners to our enlarged runners here, and to our second stage, I guess, on the intake there. So all of these have been port matched to that as well. Also, we went in and hogged out and opened up our runners coming in, and then port matched the VDI here. So as you can see when I open this, so when you actually open this fully, it actually used to hang over really bad on each side. Now it's perfectly matched to it. So we got our VDI matched, and then I also was able, took a while, was able to port match the SSV down at the bottom. So as that opens and closes, it is actually perfectly port matched as well. Rounded all the edges coming down in. So I mean, literally we did everything we could possibly do for intake flow with a factory intake manifold. So we got that. The goal here is just to try and see if we can't get a RX-8 motor with a factory bolt-on header and a factory bolt-on intake to produce 245 horsepower, all motor, to the wheels in an RX-8. Not a Star Mazda. That is a totally different box in that car with very much less drivetrain loss, which is why you see such higher numbers. Also, the tires are only 16-inch. They're very tiny wheels on that car. So we're trying to see how we can maximize the entire motor and see if the bridge is a a viable option for a lot of people. But we needed a good solid base, so we did everything we possibly could to make as much as we can. We will be tuning this on VersaTune first, and possibly Mazda Edit for the street guys, and trying to build the highest horsepower, and also it's, of course, the sound. It's a full bridge, so you're gonna hear it. It's gonna be loud. But we just want to see what the pros and cons are to doing this kind of a build, because I haven't really seen much of it. And we will be covering it with KaRL here, going over everything, dynoing, grafting, the issues we may have with it, tuning, setup, you name it. We're going to go over all of that. We'll have the dyno graphs as well, logs while doing it, so we can see where we are with it. So this is our starter motor, pretty much. This is our base to everything we're going to do going forward. We do have the street port one, which did fantastic. I made like 228 horsepower wheel, and we will be tuning on E85 as well, just to see the differences there. So we will do a pump gas and an E85, so you can see the difference between those two as well. We can also offer that on other cars as well. However, with VersaTune and Mazda Edit, we cannot do flex. On those, you'll be stuck with flipping the tune back and forth, or maybe we can hook it to a switch for map switching. We're working on a few other options to make things easier for those individuals that want that, or just a track guy that wants to flip a switch and throw 85 in it. Now, we are working to do a Haltech patch harness setup, so that we can tune these on the Haltech ECU as well. Now that will be true flex fuel. You can do whatever you want, you can go back and forth with that. That is only really going to change timing, really, and then also our heat thresholds on the exhaust. So there will be EGTs hooked in, and there will be safeties for the temp on the exhaust. We will also be trying a short or just a basic bolt-on header, and we will also be trying an extended one. We will probably go back maybe about 3 feet, so about mid pipe area where it comes through routes in. There'll be a V-band there. Also want to try an expansion chamber in the back on a couple different setups. With that, we can then see if the expansion chamber helps. We're going to try a couple different sizes. Also, those will be V-banded in, so we can just easily go in and out, and that will also show where we're picking up power, if we lost power, whatever. At that point, at the end of all of this, we can then get a good understanding of what it is capable of in factory form. Now, the next step we will be swapping the rotor housings out for REWs and CNCing the water jackets into them. We will be doing one motor with all the ports, so that will be 6 ports. Then we'll do the same setup with the header, where we'll have a short version and then use the long version. The long version will have V-bands or slip joints in it, so we can adapt the hybrid to the Renesis header very easily. Cheap to time and less time consuming. Then after that, we can then see back and forth where we picked up power, how we picked up power, where this motor will shine. Now, obviously, if it shines above 6,500, it's a perfect track motor for NA road course stuff, because that's where they stay pretty much the whole time. So as long as we can make power from there to 10, we're good. Now, after that, we will be doing a custom intake. Same principal setup as our factory lower intake, except we will be cutting it here and doing a custom CNC flange coming up into a plenum and running ITBs that are drive-by-wire. Pretty much 2 throttle bodies wired in with the same size injectors and everything, to see if the ITBs will give us any extra effort. We will be watching the data as well while doing that, and then that'll kind of give us, you know, hey, that's everything we can possibly do to bolt on product to this motor without getting too radical with it. Now, after that, we will go and do a set of full peripherals. Now, this is all going to be based off of data that we receive from the hybrid to see if it did make it better, or if maybe we're hitting a restriction with the intake at that point because we have so much exhaust flow without the full peripheral. So another idea, so we're gonna, after that, we will run a full peripheral with the hybrid setup and see if that helps. Now, one thing I'd like to do at that point would be to change out the center plate here for a GSL SE plate. The main reason for that is the RX-8 has a very weak exhaust pulse, and it's mainly because it's shared. So this port shares both pulses at the same time. So the issue with that is your scavenging effect with NA. So I think if we get rid of this and only run the peripherals and just the exhaust out into 2 runners back with like a full ITB or even this setup, will yield better performance up top. We may, you know, yield an extra 10, 15, 20 horsepower. Get up there with the 13B, standard 13B guys. And at that point, this motor's very cheap, very readily available from Mazda to build those kind of motors for street applications. And if we can make 275 wheel on the street for some street car guys, I think a lot of guys would be very happy with that. Especially if, you know, for the weekend track guys or just the weekend warrior guys that want to go out with a fun car. If we can yield like the standard 13B, make 320 wheel with a full peripheral and a hybrid motor, I think a lot of RX-8 guys would buy that all day long. It's an extra, you know, 120 horsepower over a stock motor. So I think it'd be a fun project, but we needed to, so what we're going to do is we're starting here, and over the course of this year, I've got 2 more engines lined up for this, and then of course we'll sell the old motor if someone is interested in the older one with a refresh, but we'll know exactly what it makes, how reliable it is, how the seals wore in the motor, you name it. The biggest one is going to be finding out about that center exhaust port. And if we eliminate this, if that is going to make things better, or maybe cause some premature failure issues due to uneven fire of the exhaust. So these are all things that we're going to do over a course of this year with chapters. You guys can all see it, we can see it. It's going to keep track of our own work with that. And at the end of this year, we'll find out, you know, without a doubt, what worked and what didn't work. And yeah, so because everybody, you know, I posted a picture. Everybody's like literally ready to burn down the shop over it because I'm doing it. But why? And I'm like, okay, but because nobody really had any definitive evidence. Who, you know, they're like, oh, bridge ports don't make any more power. Okay, well, who built the motor? some dude in a garage, okay, fine, whatever. Now, the other thing is did they port the intake for the extra volume? That's a question, adequate question as well, because if your restriction is in your lower intake or the intake itself, doing extra porting in a motor is not going to do anything for you. So at this point, we've done everything without a doubt. Now we just need to figure out our restriction points are going to be the top part of the intake, you know, as far as making even more than this, or the exhaust itself. So we have, you know, we narrowed down a lot of things with this project just to kind of check a lot of the boxes up front. But stay tuned and we're going to have some fun.